Enterprising New Zealander by the name of Johnny Hoskins introduced dirt track speedway motorcycle racing to the rest of the world. 75 years have now passed since that first day when an appreciative crowd was sprayed with the dirt from the rear wheel of a motorcycle sliding sideways during competition around the Maitland Showground in New South Wales. Today the sport is currently contested in over 30 countries at venues varying in size from 100 metres to 1,000 metres in length. The larger circuits are now known as long tracks and must measure a minimum of 730 metres to qualify for long track status. Today our cameras have travelled to Tamworth, the country music capital of Australia, to cover the 1999 Jack Daniels Australian Long Track Grand Prix. Promoter of this prestigious event is former New Zealander himself, who now resides and lives in Australia. I refer to none other than 6 times World Speedway and 3 times World Long Track champion Ivan Major, whom I spoke with a little earlier. Ivan, you've assembled riders from 7 countries. Who do you see as the main contenders for this year's Jack Daniels Australian Long Track Grand Prix title?
Well, obviously Tatum, the world champion, is well, he's world champion. He's in a class of his own at the moment. But there's a few other guys, Oleg Kukushkin from Russia and Sergei Erishin from Russia. Those 2 guys are going very good. Lai Tasinski, the Ukraine's going good. And of course you can't forget Chris Watson from Australia. Chris has got equal machinery of anyone in the world. He's very, very determined. He's been second twice in this Grand Prix in the last 10 years, or last 9 years, sorry, and he's determined to win one.
Well, this, it would be fair to say, is the lowest number of countries that have been represented. Are you terribly disappointed with quality riders like you've just mentioned?
Well, yes, we've got very good quality this year. We've had up to, as you know, 13 countries represented about 5-6 years ago, but we normally have sort of 8 or 9 countries represented anyway, but as it happens, we've got 7 this year, and it's the 10th Grand Prix. It's grown in stature. It's very important now overseas. The results and this film go to about 30-odd countries, so it's a prestigious event now.
Current world champion Kelvin Tatum, welcome back to the shores of Australia.
Thanks very much. Pleased to be here.
How do you find the track so far here at Tamworth Showground?
We did a few laps here on Friday. It felt pretty good actually. I think the biggest concern for all the European guys is the actual heat today. I think the track will ride pretty well.
Yes, dehydration is something that the Europeans have experienced before here in Australia, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. It's something that it can sneak up on you. You don't realise it, and just got to keep sipping water all day.
Well, you've won one of the rounds of another championship being contested here in Australia before. How do you rate your chances here at Tamworth?
Well, it's a pretty tough field. I think that, you know, it's not a foregone conclusion. Obviously, I feel I have a good chance of winning, but there'll be several riders, I'm sure, wanting. A couple of the Russian boys are going good, and Glenn, Cunningham, and of course Chris Watson, who's already had 2 second places. They'll all be championing at the bit to win today, I'm sure.
How much pressure is on your shoulders as the current world champion to beat everybody else here this weekend?
There is pressure, and that comes with winning a world title. You don't appreciate it when you've won it, but the next year around, every time you sit on the bike, you're there to be shot at, so you have to accept that and get on with it.
Current New Zealand long track champion Tony Nagel joins us trackside. Welcome to Australia.
Thank you very much. Good to be here.
How do you find the circuits here in Australia compared back home at New Zealand?
A little bit smaller than our long tracks at home. We've got some of the biggest tracks in the world back there on the trotting tracks, but very competitive over here. Great surfaces and, you know, really good atmosphere, so it's been really enjoyable so far.
Are the surfaces any different to back home?
No, muchness. They're all sort of that, you know, the marbly little shale that the horses race on, so all just about the same, so it's quite adaptable, you know, coming from New Zealand to here.
So where do you expect to pull your winning edge from?
Round the outside.
A good crowd on hand here at the Tamworth Showground that should witness a spectacular day's racing in celebration of the 10th Jubilee Australian Long Track Grand Prix. The Grand Parade and rider introduction is just being concluded right now, and very shortly we'll be underway with the first event on the program. It will feature the Capital Truck Centre FTX 250cc solos, and riders will be making their way out to the start line not too far away. All attention now builds up as the FTX 250 motocross solo class is at the line, the first event on the program. It features Gregory, Todd, Darmody Jones, Radmore, Ross, who got a good start, Skeins, Emerson and Goldsmith, who leads down out of turn number 1 for the first of 3 laps here. Nathan Anderson from West Maitland up there in second place on machine number 97. A very telltale sign style of Nathan Anderson's. He gets that left leg down and very much supports himself A lot of riders don't use the same sort of style. There's a graphic description on screen now of Anderson's style as the battle continues behind them. Up there also is Jeremy Emerson, but Goldsmith it is that leads at the moment. Anderson still comfortably back there in second placing, but the battle is continuing behind. Robert Jones on screen there in third placing with the yellow style of leathers, is now chasing after Anderson down the back straight and into turns 3 and 4 to complete another lap very shortly. Now that man on screen is a former New South Wales, Queensland and I think Victorian but definitely Australian trials champion who has been attracted with the competition here of going fast on a long track, a showground at the Tamworth Showground. Jones there on screen now is not able to make up much ground on Anderson, who looks quite comfortable up there in second place. And Goldsmith it is that leads down through the pits turn for the last time. Anderson there getting a little bit squirrely and getting the back end a little bit too far out, but not too much damage done by that. He'll comfortably secure second place behind Goldsmith, and in third it is Robert Jones. All of that in a race time of 1:26.00 seconds. Time now for heat number 2 on the program, and it also features Capital Truck Centre FTX 250cc solos. We'll find that Pritchett, Levy, Osborne, Lever, Ross, Croker, Skews and Jody Perry on the extreme outside should be very dominant in this form of racing. You can already see that the throttle is almost down to the stop, with Steve Croker up there in second place and Warwick Levy from the central coast of New South Wales securing third. Out of turn 2 and down the back straight, Levy in third place there is under a fair amount of pressure, and he'll have his work cut out for him because Nick Osborne is now making an assault up the inside of him. Levy on the outside, Osborne on the inside. You can see Levy just tentatively keeping his left leg out there to balance the bike as Jody Perry simply runs away with the race at this stage. Steve Croker back there in second, but the attention and the battle is certainly on in earnest for third placing. Warwick Levy on screen there now heads the field from the rest of the bunch. Out of turn 2 and down the back straight. He's shaken off the challenges now of Osborne, and that's pretty good for him as he knocks it down a gear and just tentatively touches the brakes to unsettle the bike down through turns 3 and 4 and onto the main straight. You can see the lead that Jody Perry has. It's 3/4 of a length of the straight here at Tamworth Showground as he heads Steve Croker on the last lap down through turns 1 and 2. The battle for third is just entering those 2 turns now, and it's going to go right down to the wire. Leading it is Warwick Levy, only just ahead of the rider on machine number 14, Nick Osborne. But here comes Jody Perry, quite comfortably a victor as he takes a checkered flag, a good straight length ahead of Steve Croker, who's about 3/4 of a straight length ahead of that battle for third place, which is eventually taken out by Levy just on the line in a time of 1:24.09 seconds.
Well, that was some great
away. And you can expect some pretty big fireworks. Tony Palmer of England should feature well. So should Peter Anderson of Sweden. Also look out for Oleg Kyrgyzstan from Russia. He's an extremely fast starter, and that's him that takes the lead at the moment. Well, at least it was momentarily on the extreme outside. It was Kyrgyzstan. Now he opens the throttle to the stop and gets the drive that he requires and goes right round the outside. I think you'll find that that was the rider on machine number 9, and that's Englishman Tommy Palmer, I beg your pardon, as he comes out of turns 3 and 4. You can see that these bikes look like they've been pulled from front to back and stretched and lowered, and that's exactly what they're supposed to look like, because these bikes are 500cc single-cylinder 4-stroke engines. They have no brakes, and they only have 2 gears, one to get them out of the starting gate, and as quick as they're out of the gate, they flick a lever on the left-hand side of the handlebars, and that engages them up into top gear. So our race leader at the moment is the rider on board machine number 6, and that's Russian Oleg Kyrgyzstan. Back in second place is the Englishman Tommy Palmer, and Ben Peck from Gosford in New South Wales has made his way up into third. Fairly well strewn out as they head down the back straight for the last time. You can see the way the riders try and get their body weight nice and flat on the bike down the back straight. Then they move it all up over the front wheel and let the back wheel do the steering and the driving. And Kyrgyzstan gets it from Russia. Ahead of Palmer from England, and Gosford's Ben Peck, a very creditable third in a time of 1:15.88 seconds.
Stay with us. Back after the break with more motor racing action here on Speedweek.
For the Jack Daniels Australian Long Track Grand Prix Solos has got off to a fairly shaky start already, because this is a rerun. Czech Republic rider Pavel Ondrasky has been excluded for touching the tapes. So there's been a bit of shenanigans going on at the start line, but look out for Kelvin Tatum of England. He starts in the middle of the pack there on the predominantly blue machine and heads afield down the back through the first turn for the first time. Quite a comprehensive victor. Look at the lead that he's got already. He's got the drive. By gee, he's got this bike set up well. Down the back straight, left leg parallel to the ground. Now turning it into the pits turn. Up there into second place is the Ukraine rider, and that of course is Alexander Layatazinski as he heads the rest of the field out of turn number 3 and 4 and down the front straight. But look at Kelvin Tatum. He's got his body weight nice and low to the ground. He's letting the bike do all the work. That's Dennis Hall on board machine number 20. He's currently situated back in about 4th or 5th placing at the moment, and it looks like he's suffering some mechanical failure because he's dropping off the pace. Kelvin Tatum, this will be a scintillating time down the main straight and through turns 1 and 2. He has not backed off. He's by far and away the strongest rider that we've seen on a long track solo motorcycle here at Tamworth Showgrounds so far in this meeting. Down the back straight into turns 3 and 4. This is the style that took him to a world championship. I think you'll find that he's done that before many times in his career. What a fantastically fast time, a 1:12.18 to eventually defeat Anthony Davies from West Wyalong. And in third place, the Ukraine rider Alexander Layatazinski. As competitors make their way to the start line for Heat 3 of the Jack Daniels Australian Long Track Grand Prix Solos, that was number 49, Craig Landrigan, experiencing some difficulties in starting his machine. Contestants to look out for, the stars in this one will be Chris Watson on the extreme inside of the circuit, or the right-hand side of your screen now. His biggest contenders should come from David Howe of England on machine number 10. And look out for the two New Zealanders, Paul Butler on 15 and Tony Nagel on machine number 14. But it's a clear-cut leader at the moment is Chris Watson as he heads down out of turn number 2 and down the back straight for the first time. Throwing out a bit of a challenge there is Sergei Ereshine. Now, Ereshine is a fantastic rider as well, and he hails from Russia. There's Ereshine on screen there, riding machine number 10, was one of the men that I mentioned. That was Englishman David Howe. Down through turns 1 and 2 for the second time, and you'll find that David Howe it is that's overcome the challenges there of Ereshine. No, in fact, it's not. Ereshine has still managed to maintain his second placing. He's looking a little bit ragged, though, riding right on the edge as Ereshine on board machine number 11. As he turns out of turns 3 and 4 and down the main straight. He's pulled to the extreme inside of the circuit because Watson was covering his lines well and truly as he headed down through the correct line into turn 1 and 2. Down the back straight for the last time now, and Chris Watson it is that leads. Sergei Ereshine of Russia coming under very big pressure now as Watson, as Russian rider Ereshine comes around. Oh, look at Watson there. He almost turned the bike inside out, and Ereshine has backed off. This is a bit of a boil-over. It's ended up getting second place as Tony Nagel of New Zealand, and third goes to David Howe of England. Chris Watson shaking his head. He cannot believe he got away with that one. A 1:16.50 second time. Final qualifying heat, heat number 4 of round 1 of qualifying for the Jack Daniels Australian Long Track Grand Prix, and it features from Slovenia Isaac Sanchez, and look out of course for Mark Murphy, the Bigfoot as he's called. Rick Bennett of New Zealand is also another favoured rider there, and look at that off the start line. Bennett just got the drive that he didn't want. Now this is a man that we spoke to earlier about his injuries, and here's what he had to say.
Yeah, I had a pretty huge crash 7 years ago, and this is my third meeting, so I got an arm that doesn't work very well and missing fingers, collarbones. They said I'd never use this arm again, so I've really just got to not be throttle crazy, but just have a good think about what I'm doing, because I don't want to go back to New Zealand like that again. So I want to enjoy the day, but I want to go home in one piece.
Well, as you can see, Ricky Bennett of New Zealand has certainly not got the luck that he wanted. He's being attended to by the ambulance on the inside, and therefore we have had a red flag incident in this race. Now it's time for a restart. So a restart of heat number 4 of round 1 of the qualifying. And a fairly even start there now, probably getting the best of the start. Not far away from the fence was the Englishman, Glenn Cunningham. Now, he's borrowed a machine. This is not the bike that he's normally riding. He had mechanical problems, so he's called on a favour from Pavel Ondrasky, the rider that was excluded in the previous heat. But now he finds himself under a lot of pressure being applied by Strider Horton, who goes down. The Mayfield rider, the Newcastle rider, has dropped it rather comprehensively down in pit turn. He's A-OK. He's a bit dusted, busted and disgusted, but he'll get up and finish the race. That certainly worked into the hands of Cunningham now, who's under a little bit less pressure, but still pressure anyway, from Lee Hearn of Gosford. Down the back straight, Hearn tore off a visor so that he could see clear vision, as Strider Horton is not going to finish the race as I first thought. And you can see there that Lee Hearn actually backed off. Well, the red flag has been brought out, maybe because Strider Horton was not off the circuit quickly enough. You can see now that the red flag is definitely on display, so again we'll have another restart. They say that the third time is the luckiest. Let's see if we can prove that theory or otherwise, because this is the third running of heat number 4 in round 1 of qualifying for Jack Daniels Australian Long Track Grand Prix Solos. The field is somewhat diminished, you might say, with only 4 competitors left at the start line, and it's a bit of a case of deja vu, a repeat performance, because Glenn Cunningham of England has shown the rest of the field a clean set of hands and heels. Up there in second place on machine number 17 is the Gosford lad, Lee Hearn, who was doing a good job earlier in the race before it was stopped prematurely because of Strider Horton falling off the machine and therefore bringing out the red flag. That rider on machine number 91 is Shane Haggerty, a rider with an immense amount of experience on both speedway and long track. And he comes from the Mayfield Motorcycle Club in Newcastle. A rider at the back of the field there having a bit of trouble. That was in fact Shane Haggerty, just getting a little bit raggedy was Haggerty down in turn number 2 as our race leader heads through the pits turn, leading quite comprehensively. Englishman Glenn Cunningham looks like he's going to ultimately take a very comfortable victory with one more lap to go there for Shane Haggerty, sitting back in third place. Paul Parlett is the 4th rider out on the circuit at the moment, but it's all Glenn Cunningham down the back straight. You can see the breeze flapping there on the pads on the side of his vest, the tags that hold them together, and this rider has certainly got an immense amount of ability and talent. Checkered flag goes to Glenn Cunningham first. Second place will go to Lee Hearn of Gosford. Third secured by Shane Haggerty of Mayfield in a time of 1:18.57 seconds.